let's talk about Glory 100. Of course, this is the second part of a two-part video series where I talk about all fights around Glory 100. I do analysis, predictions, and in my last video, I talked about, the title fights and the super fights, headlined, of course, by Rico Verhoeven versus Artem Vakidov. Very intriguing fight. In that video, I tell you why that's an interesting fight, because a lot of people, still are very doubtful that this is a great fight. To be honest, I think it's a great fight. And in that video, I tell you why. If you haven't seen that one yet, go check it out. In this video, I'm talking about the 4 one-night, 4-man tournaments, for the Glory Last Heavyweight Standing Tournament. Of course, this is the second part because the first part in phase 1, because this tournament is all, split up in 2 phases, and I've talked about it in the previous video. But anyway, in Glory's last event at Glory 99, 32 heavyweight fighters were able to, qualify for the second round in the Glory Last Heavyweight Standing Tournament. Of course, a lot of spectacular stuff happened because these are heavyweights. A lot of people have, been very critical about heavyweight, but that event actually delivered. I think there were like 9 knockouts out of 16 fights, which is pretty damn impressive. Of course, they, started to do, knockout bonuses, and I feel like those knockout bonuses, paid off very well. Of course, the guys who promoted this knockout bonus, who sponsored it, they were like, we're happy to sponsor, but they probably didn't expect this many knockouts. Anyway, it helped, get this heavyweight division a little bit out of their comfort zone because, in the back in the day, the criticism wasn't necessarily undeserving. I feel like while heavyweight kickboxing has been, one of the more staples in kickboxing, in the last 10 years, heavyweight kickboxing wasn't the same as it was during the K1 golden era. And I feel like Glory is trying to, bring that back, organize a big tournament, big heavyweights, also, small heavyweights as well, to create that mystical, legendary kind of vibe. They want to bring back the greatness of kickboxing by using heavyweights. In that regard, there has been a lot of criticism because, while I think heavyweight has always been spectacular, there are so many other divisions that I'm like, these guys can fight. I mean, look at light heavyweight. That's insane. Welterweight, featherweight, all those divisions have their, unique abilities, unique fighters, storylines, exceptional talents. It's all, in my opinion, a way of, how do you market these, divisions? Because I feel like marketing and storytelling is everything. You got to sell me on why this idea is interesting. But, a lot of people in the mainstream, they do like heavyweight because these fighters are larger than life. I mean, if someone like Rico Verhoeven, he's like 125 kilograms. That's a huge guy. If he's fighting, you're like, dude, that's a giant. That's these things only happen in action movies. So I get the appeal, but at the same time, I feel like there's so many other divisions that are, deserving of that spot. Anyway, still very happy about that event at Glory 99 because, again, it delivered. Now they have 16 fighters who are going to Glory 100, and these 16 fighters have been, divided in 4 different tournaments by random selection. And, these 4 tournaments are very interesting because these are all one-night 4-man tournaments, which means all participants who are, going through the semifinal have to fight again on the same night in the final of their respective tournament. So long story short, this is going to be awesome. Of course, we have big talents like Jamal Ben Saddik, we have Bahram Rajabzadeh, Kuki Osaro, we have Milos Cvjeticanin, Mory Kromah is entering, Caceres is actually entering from light heavyweight. He was supposed to be fighting as a reserve fighter, but for some reason, Thomas Mosny pulled out. So now he is fighting in his place. Also very interesting. So it's going to be a wild tournament and I can't wait. You know what? Just let's dive into it because there's a lot to talk about. And as mentioned, I became a dad, a few weeks ago. Time is scarce, so let's do it. First, let's talk about the reserve fight of the night. First thing that comes into mind is that there's only 1 reserve fight and there are like 4-man tournaments. So, in tournaments, injuries are bound to happen. So this is very interesting since, for example, if there are multiple fighters, getting injured, there's only 1 reserve fighter. Of course, you could say, let's just take the one who lost in the semifinal and give him a chance. But that doesn't feel as legit as when there's something who's actually fought for it. And the second thing that, notices me is that, in this reserve fight, although I do enjoy the fighters who are in it, I'll be talking about it in a minute, but I expected there, to be fighters who had previously fought in the Glory 99, first opening round in the 32-man tournament. So, for example, maybe Amit Kranic or Rada Opacic could have, filled those spots. But it didn't happen. The fighters who are in this tournament, let me check, are pretty awesome. Especially the first name is Iuri Fernandes. He's from Portugal. He has been, a very big, talent for a while now. He is his current record is 9-1. Doesn't sound very impressive, but he's very talented. He actually was brought in Romania a few months ago to, fight against, I think, Bogdan Stoica, as cannon fodder. But he actually, he pulled up a great fight and defeated, the fan favorite. So he is one of those guys who, are going to be a well addition to, the Glory roster. And actually, he's originally a light heavyweight, so I expect him to, eventually come to light heavyweight as well. And that division is incredibly stacked. So that's Glory would be wrong if they wouldn't organize a Glory last light heavyweight standing. So they should do that. He's fighting against Samuele Pugliese. He fought in K1. He fought in, I think, KOK. He's pretty good as well, and he is a light heavyweight as well originally. So actually 2 light heavyweights fighting in a heavyweight tournament is kind of weird, but at the same time, K1 was built on small and big heavyweights, so I do not mind too much. But this is going to be an interesting fight. I think Iuri Fernandes is going to win this fight, but we'll see what happens. All right, let's first talk about the first 4-man tournament. In the first semifinal, we have Iraj Azizpour taking on Ionut Iancu. In the second semifinal, we have Asadulla Nasipov taking on Bouzid. Interesting. Iraj Azizpour, he came into Glory with a bang. He knocked out his opponent by, way of spinning back fist, which is interesting. He's also kind of guy who smiles when he fights. He enjoys, fighting, and that, makes me having a good time, I guess. I mean, I feel like if guys are enjoying fighting, when they enjoy doing what they love, man, makes me happy as well, I guess. So I can't wait for him to enter the ring, and he's going to fight someone who enjoys fighting as well, which is always evident when he fights. And of course, I'm talking about the Romanian tank, and that's of course Ionut Iancu. And this was a fight that when both guys, were in this tournament, I really hope that they would someday make this fight, and it's going to happen. 2 big boys, not very tall, actually very stocky, who going to, all in against each other, because both are known for knockouts and both are known for, coming up close, get on the inside, just hit each other with the kitchen sink. I can't wait. This is going to be a banger. But if I have to, pick a winner for this semifinal, I feel like, Iraj Azizpour just is a little bit more experienced, and that's why I think he is going to win this fight. He is incredibly great at timing his spinning back fist, and I expect him to do this in this fight as well. Well, let me put it like this. One of these guys is going to get knocked out. In the next semifinal of the first tournament, of course, again, as mentioned, we have Nasipov taking on Bouzid. Nasipov actually didn't impress me as much as I, expected him to be. He did win his fight. He won by decision. He did pretty good. He fought a technical fight. Bouzid, he had a opponent who, unfortunately, he fought against Nathan Cook. The day before the tournament, his father passed away and he wasn't there at all. And he's also a Muay Thai fighter. So coming into kickboxing, against a fighter who was determined to knock you out, it just wasn't his day. And I felt bad, but at the same time, Bouzid did exactly what he needed to do, is come up close, go with the punches, knock him out, and he got his ticket to the next round. And now we're here facing off against Nasipov, and I feel like Bouzid has a lot to prove, because in his first fight he came on as a talent, but he lost against Mory Kromah by injury. And now he's here, proving that he is one of the best. And I feel like, although Nasipov is very technical, I feel like Bouzid could, overcome him by, just sheer power and combination game. That means that I predict that Azizpour and, Bouzid will be entering into the final of the first 4-man tournament. And I am going to, do a prediction because, again, I already mentioned how these guys will be fighting. Both are coming here to knock each other out. Bouzid is a little bit more tall than Azizpour, but Azizpour has that crazy spinning back kick. His timing is impeccable. It's going to be very interesting how he's going to, handle the length of Bouzid. This one is actually very difficult to predict, but I gotta say a name, and I feel like if Bouzid can, manage his distance control, then he might be able to take it. But I don't know. I feel like Azizpour is just so amazing in, coming up close, get into the pocket, making sure you get no way out of here. And if you get out of here, you get a spinning back fist on your face. So I think Iraj Azizpour is going to take the first 4-man tournament. In the second 4-man one-night tournament, we have, again, 2 incredible fights. The first semifinal, is a fight between Colin George and, of course, Big Sexy Nico Horta. Awesome fight. Second semifinal, we have, Milos Cvjeticanin, great fighter as well, taking on Caceres, also one of the biggest prospects in kickboxing right now. Both are interesting fights, and I don't want to see them lose. That's what's up. But, the 3 people are going to lose. So let's talk about the first semifinal. Colin George versus Nico Big Sexy Horta. Let's talk first about Big Sexy. He came into glory, against Levi Richter, the last-minute replacement fighter. And that fight went exactly the opposite as a lot of people thought. A lot of people thought, Levi Richter is going to walk over him. But nothing could be more further from the truth because, Big Sexy was there and was standing his ground. He was actually, kickboxing with him. His stamina is impeccable. Of course, he trains at ARJ gym with, of course, Tariq, Michael Boapea, and of course, now also with Levi Richters. All are known for their stamina. When he entered Glory in his next fight, again, last-minute fight. And eventually, for the Glory 99 first round of the last heavyweight standing tournament, he finally, had a full training camp. But unfortunately, at that time, he got drawn with Rado Opacic, one of the biggest prospects in heavyweight kickboxing right now. So a lot of people, counted Big Sexy out. But man, he knocked out the biggest prospect, Rado Opacic. That's the biggest upset of the year. Insane. So I just gotta say, I feel like Big Sexy with his momentum, I think he will be beating Colin George. I mean, that momentum is just crazy. But at the same time, Colin George is a big guy, knows how to, knock people out as well, because he knocked out his opponent as well in his fight. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Also, these guys are friends. They actually didn't want to fight each other, but yeah, that's how a draw works, so they have no choice. Also, I don't want to discredit Colin George because he's an amazing fighter, but I just feel like a Big Sexy, he is just a different kind of animal. I feel like with his stamina, with his endurance, with his, capability of getting a beating and not going down, I feel like he's going to the next round. So the next semifinal, we have Milos Cvjeticanin taking on Caceres. Both are great light heavyweight prospects. And as mentioned, these big tournaments, I have no problem with light heavyweights entering this tournament in heavyweight. And Milos Cvjeticanin came off a amazing fight, amazing win over Nabil Kaghab. A lot of people felt like Kaghab would have won that fight. I didn't. I definitely felt like Milos had this fight in the pocket. He just did the right thing. He came up close and smothered him. Blood was everywhere. He made it a street fight, and he showed a little bit of the blueprint, like how do you defeat Kaghab. And he's coming in this tournament. Actually, he should have been fighting Thomas Masny, who defeated Sina Karimian. But for some reason, Masny isn't fighting in this tournament. Caceres replaces him. Caceres didn't fought at Glory 99. He originally, of course, is a light heavyweight. Caceres was actually supposed to be in a reserve fight, but that fight got scrapped, and now he's entering the tournament against Milos Cvjeticanin. This is going to be an interesting fight, but I feel like this fight would have been better at light heavyweight. That would be the most fitting. But this fight is at heavyweight, and that's why, let me put it like this. I think when this fight would have been taking place in light heavyweight, I probably would have said, no, you know what? I think I give the edge to Caceres. But because this is heavyweight, I'm giving this to Milos Cvjeticanin, because Milos Cvjeticanin is very good at heavyweight. Milos Cvjeticanin won a one-night 8-man tournament in K1, to actually qualify for the final 8 in December. Eventually, he chose to go to Glory. Probably a better choice career-wise, since he's now entering not only, in the light heavyweight division, but also in this Glory last heavyweight standing tournament as well. Gets a lot of opportunities to fight But he has a lot of experience in heavyweight, and he has knocked people out in heavyweight. So I feel like this power, his speed, he's very precise. He knows, exactly where he needs to hit you and when to hit you. And if we look at Caceres, he is all about speed. He knows how to work the body. He's also very precise fighter. But, he's coming off light heavyweight, hasn't fought in heavyweight just like Milos has done. So I feel like the edge goes to Milos. But it's a difficult fight to predict because I've never seen Cem in heavyweight. But that's exactly why I feel like Milos Cvjeticanin is probably going to win this fight. Again, I want to see this fight in light heavyweight as well. So now we have a final between Nico, Horta, Big Sexy, and Milos Cvjeticanin. This is an interesting fight. This is a big guy who never backs down versus a relatively small guy who is very precise and comes up close. I feel like if you want to stop Big Sexy, you gotta completely able to dominate him, outpoint him, or you gotta just shut him down by, drop him. And the thing is, it's very difficult, to drop Big Sexy because he can endure a lot of punishment. And at the same time, he's a big guy. So as Milos is a little bit more, on the shorter side, it's going to be very hard, to get those points. Unless, like with Kachab, he comes up close and doesn't give any space to Big Horta, to Big Sexy. But I don't see that happening, to be honest. I feel like, although I like Milos Cvjeticanin a lot, I like his style, I like his personality, I like the way he moves himself in the kickboxing scene, I still feel like Big Sexy should win this fight. Not fairly easy, but if he, sticks to the game plan, just, use your distance, smother your opponent on the distance, don't leave any space to come close, then I think Big Sexy is going to win this fight. Also, again, a guy with a lot of character, a lot of, storytelling potential. He's a likable guy as well. Both guys are. So if possible, I would love to see both guys in the tournament, but this is what's going to happen. And I think Big Sexy is going to win the second tournament. Let's talk about the third four-man heavyweight tournament. And this is a very interesting one because not only there are a lot of popular fighters like Bahram Rajabzadeh and Mory Kromah in this particular tournament, but also there are like 3 light heavyweights fighting in this tournament because Asdren Gashi is the only true heavyweight in this tournament. I say that because, this is a tournament where light heavyweights were, of course, invited to come fight in this heavyweight tournament, which is interesting because, like I mentioned before, back in the old days, in the K1 Golden Age, it was an open weight class and a lot of fighters, were the weight difference between fighters were sometimes pretty significant. And I think that makes for an interesting tournament. So this particular tournament is interesting as well. If we look at the matchups, the first semifinal, we're looking at Mory Kromah, one of the biggest prospects in light heavyweight, taking on Alin Nechita, who is basically a light heavyweight as well. This is very interesting because, Mory Kromah is a very tall fighter who can push the pace, but as well as, keep his distance with his length. But he's fighting against Nechita, who is quite small for a heavyweight, but is very fast, fights in salvos with his boxing skills. When he fought against, Amit Kranic, he came up so close and, he made it a dirty fight, shooting in salvos, gave no room for Kranic to, get on his own action. And I feel like he's going to do this as well against Mory Kromah. And Mory Kromah has shown that he has, it's not always as easy for him to, to fight a shorter fighter because they will always, smother you. They will try to give you no room to, pull up actions on your own. So for Mory Kromah, it's very vital to, keep your opponent on the distance and use, for example, those long legs, kick him in the head, kick him in the leg, kick him in the body, even flying knees, whatever. You got to make sure that your opponent stays away from you or is going down. But Nechita is a very tough opponent. He comes up, from light heavyweight, but still is one of the most toughest underdogs of this tournament. I think he is actually one of the biggest underdogs of this tournament. I mean, in Glory he's fairly unknown, but I feel like he could surprise us. But of course, if we look at the stats, then I would say I would give this tournament to Mory Kromah, but I wouldn't rule out an upset by Alin Nechita. In the second semifinal of this tournament, we have fan favorite Bahram Rajabzadeh taking on a true heavyweight in Azizpour Gashi. I mean, Azizpour Gashi has been, doing a very good job in Glory. I think he's on a 4-fight winning streak, with knocking people out as well. And, he might not be the most, technical kickboxer out there. Well, he is one of the, bigger prospects at this moment. And he's fighting against, fan favorite Bahram Rajabzadeh. When he fights, things happen. So this is bound to be a spectacular fight. The fans will be roaring for Bahram Rajabzadeh. I mean, Asdren Gashi is going into the Lion's Den, and that makes for, an interesting interaction between two guys. But what I'm expecting in this fight is Bahram Rajabzadeh being Bahram Rajabzadeh, by being a Tasmanian devil, coming up close and do whatever you can do just to hit your face, because he is incredibly explosive, fast, and he doesn't care if you come up close. He will, kick the shit out of your face by, using a front kick from a short distance. And these things are pretty unique, in heavyweight kickboxing these days. So I'm really looking forward to this fight. It's going to be awesome. And I think a lot of people are also looking forward to this one as well. And, although there will be a big weight difference and a big size difference, I still feel Bahram Rajabzadeh is so talented that he could pull this off, even by knockout maybe. But it's going to be his, this is going to be his first big test in this tournament. Of course, in his last fight, he fought against Brian Dawes, who was originally a light heavyweight as well. He was a pretty small guy, same height. Asdren Gashi is taller, so this is going to be an interesting dynamic between the two guys. So, in my prediction, Mory Kromah, Bahram Rajabzadeh, both are going to the final of this particular tournament. And, like I mentioned, Mory Kromah has struggled with, smaller opponents. And if we look at Bahram Rajabzadeh, he's most definitely shorter than Kromah, but his style is going to be incredibly annoying for Kromah. So I feel like although Kromah is so talented, has a similar style like, Remy Bonjasky, I still feel like Bahram Rajabzadeh could pull it off, because he will give you no space to, put on some offensive. If you want to do like a jumping knee, come on, that's very difficult if you have an opponent that's in your face. So I think Bahram Rajabzadeh, I think he's gonna take this fight. But I like upsets. I like to be surprised. That's what kickboxing is all about. So we'll see what happens. In the last four-man heavyweight tournament of the night, we have two big favorites. Of course, I'm talking about Jamal Ben Saddik and Osaro. Two fighters that a lot of people don't want to see lose in this tournament. But yeah, it's a tournament. It's a draw. These things happen when there are tournaments. So let's talk about this tournament. Let's see who I think will advance to the next round, aka the final in December. The first semi-final, we have Tariq Osaro taking on Luigi Gashi, Asdren's brother. This is an interesting fight because, Luigi Gashi is an upcoming heavyweight, while Osaro is already, a well-known fighter in this division. Although, if we look at Osaro, when he, was just coming up in glory, he showed promise. He was knocking people left and right. And then he came fighting against Rico Verhoeven, the champion. And all of a sudden, it feels like, Rico Verhoeven just knocked the confidence out of this guy, because in this fight, he almost didn't do anything. And the fight afterwards, in his next fight, he fought against Bahram Rajabzadeh. He lost as well by, being too passive in that fight. So a lot of people were, discredit him like, what, he had his best time, it's over for Cookie. Which is pretty insane, because he's still a relatively young guy, but he is now slowly coming back, because he fought in Croatia against Big Sexy, and he won that fight. It wasn't the most spectacular fight, but he was going back in the winning column. Afterwards, at Glory 99, the first round of this tournament, he fought against Benjamin Adekbuy, of course, a veteran, and he knocked him out badly. So with that confidence going into this tournament, into this semi-final, that is going to be very helpful for him. And he's fighting against, an upcomer, and he wants to prove himself. Gashi made his debut at Glory 99, and while he did very well, he didn't actually impress me that much. So I feel with the experience and the power that Osaro has, with his, newfound confidence, I feel like he is going to take this fight. And I think personally that is going to be a knockout. In the next semi-final, we have, of course, one of the biggest fan favorites out there, Jamal Ben Saddik. He is taking on Soufiane Laidouni, which is a pretty interesting fight because, a lot of people, regard Laidouni as a boring technical fighter. But in his last fight, he showed he can knock people out, which was a big surprise. And when I saw the fight, I felt like this was maybe also a, big surprise for him as well. But anyway, he got the job done, and now he's taking on, Jamal Ben Saddik. Let's talk about Jamal Ben Saddik. He has been away from the sport for a long time now. And he came back this year, fought at Glory 98, and he fought against Uku Uriendal. And a lot of people expected him to go all out, just explode on his opponent, because that's what he's known for. A lot of people come to see Jamal Ben Saddik, to see a guy, be a aggressive fighter. And in that fight, he was waiting for such a long time. He was quite passive. And of course, at the end of the third round, he knocked out Uku Yurindal with a thundering high kick. But the fight itself was honestly kind of boring, to be honest. And when he fought in the tournament at Glory 99, I expected him to, be that explosive fighter again, because that's what he's known for. He was fighting against Christian Ristea, who is not exactly known as the best heavyweight out there. So I was like, I think he will go out and destroy him. But there is something to be said about Christian Ristea, about him doing a great job, keep fighting, keeping it on the distance. But Jamal Ben Saddik just was very passive. We all expected him, to knock his opponent out. He didn't. Another, to be honest, quite a boring fight. I wonder what kind of Jamal Ben Saddik we're going to see in this tournament. Are we going to see, the more, well, a little bit more passive Jamal Ben Saddik, wants to wait out and, pick his points, pick his scores, pick his actions? Or are we going to see a Jamal Ben Saddik who is going forward? Because I feel like if he waits too long, I think Soufiane Laïdouni will pick him apart, because Soufiane Laïdouni is a, very tactical and technical fighter. He's not necessarily a guy who goes for a knockout. He wants to, break you down, very progressively and eventually, get the decision win. And for Jamal Ben Saddik, I feel like he has to go and just make it a street fight, just make it dirty, because you don't want to play the game that Soufiane Laïdouni is known for. So I will pick Jamal Ben Saddik because he is one of the favorites of this tournament. Also because he's fighting in the Netherlands. There are a lot of fans that has his back. He must be feeling empowered fighting in this tournament at that day with his fans behind his back. If he is going to win, I feel it's going to be by a knockout. And that would be awesome because we all like to see knockouts. But I wouldn't rule out a technical masterclass by Soufiane Laïdouni. But I will be picking Jamal Ben Saddik also for the drama, because if he will continue on in the next phase, it's just bound to be an awesome fight. Because I said Kuki Osaro will advance to the final, and I would be happy to see him fight against Jamal Ben Saddik. Let's talk about this potential final between Kuki Osaro and Jamal Ben Saddik. That's a fight I'm pretty excited about. These guys are former teammates and now they are opponents. I think I can actually be quite short about predicting this fight because, this is heavyweight. Yes, a lot of people can, carry their power for a long time. But speed is a different beast. And I feel like Kuki Osaro is a young guy and he still has that speed, still has that power, while, Jamal Ben Saddik has shown that he's a little bit more, cautious about throwing actions recklessly. And I feel like if Kuki can throw a crazy right hook, Jamal Ben Saddik could go down. I feel that if I had to make a prediction, that Kuki Osaro wins this fight. Don't get me wrong, Jamal Ben Saddik is still a great fighter. He's still, a guy with crazy power, crazy reach, but he needs to get active in this fight. You can't just stay around and wait until your opponent comes to hit you. No, you gotta take initiative. If he takes initiative, then I can see him winning. But I think Kuki Osaro will win this final and goes to the final in December. These were my predictions for the Glory Last Heavyweight Standing 4-man tournament. And I still don't really understand why they chose to, choose for 4-man tournaments, because the winners of these tournaments will fight in December, which means that they have to wait for 6 months to get their first fight again. If they decided, when you win a semifinal, you get another event to, qualify yourself for the tournament, that would mean that they had more fights spread out through the year, which means, being more active. And, it is what it is. That's just my opinion. I would have, drag it a little bit more out, because then it's awesome, to follow the tournament. But at the same time, it is what it is. Glory chose to do this. This is a new format. It's interesting to see, how the fans will perceive this tournament. They're trying something new, and there's something to be said about trying something new. Anyway, what's next for this tournament? In August, there will be Phase 2. That's a 24-man tournament with, losers of the 32-man tournament, but also with new fighters. For example, Levi Rigters is already confirmed to participate, which is interesting. When that tournament is coming around, the winners of that phase will go to another round with another 4-man tournament, and the winners of those 4-man tournaments will qualify themselves for the tournament in December. And of course, there's only one wild card. That means that a lot of people probably hope that, you know, Rico Verhoeven will enter in that tournament, but it also could be like, for example, that a fighter who's a big fan favorite that lost in this, you know, the early rounds could be coming back in that final. But, you know, I hope that Rico Verhoeven will be coming back because, you know, he is the champion of last year's Grand Prix. It would be fitting for him to enter the tournament. A lot of people still think, you know, Rico Verhoeven, yeah, you're the champion, but you're not the same as Remy Bonjasky, Sammy Shield, Ernesto Hoost, Peter Ars. Well, again, this could be another way for Rico Verhoeven to prove that he is one of the best of all time. And, you know, in his last tournament, when he won the Grand Prix, he already said, like, you know, what else do I need to prove to you guys that I, you know, am a legit champion? So I do understand that when he's like, you know what, I'm a pass. I mean, he has done it all. So I do get it when if he doesn't enter, but for, you know, the drama, the storytelling, I'd rather have him in this tournament as well. Well, so what's next for Glory? I mean, of course, the next phases of the Glory Last Heavyweight Standing are, you know, continuing on. But not only that, in the week after this event, after Glory 100, there will be an event in Japan, a collaboration with Rise. Of course, I'm talking about the Glory Last Featherweight Standing. It's going to be awesome. It's the first round of that tournament. You know, some fighters are already confirmed to fight. For example, Jan Kaffa is fighting. I can't wait. I mean, like a lot of people know, featherweight is one of my, you know, favorite divisions out there. So I can't wait. I'm gonna watch it. It's going to be happening in Japan. So time zones will be quite tough. But since I'm a dad, you know, I'm probably already awake to watch this tournament. So it's going to be awesome. Furthermore, I mean, if you still want to hear more of my opinions on Glory 100, I recently was invited by, you know, Tim Wheaton to be a guest on this podcast. It's on Kick Sports. Go find it on YouTube. I will be linking this in the description so you can find it immediately. But I will be joined by Dogman, a writer of Beyond Kickboxing. It was an interesting conversation, so please check that out as well. And for now, I want to say enjoy the fights, enjoy Glory 100. Let me know if you agree with my predictions. Maybe you do not. Maybe you are like, what the hell are you talking about? Let me know. And, you know, if you have questions regarding kickboxing, you know, ask them as well in the comments. So I will see you in the next video. Enjoy kickboxing.